like Michael said, welcome to the virtual sharing session. Today we have Mr. Cole. He's a flight paramedic for Life Flight, which is part of the Memorial Hermann Red Duke Trauma Institute. Memorial Hermann Life Flight is a critical care air medical transport service based in Houston, Texas, and they serve the community within a 150-mile radius of the Texas Medical Center with helicopters and worldwide using fixed-wing transport. And the first air medical ambulance in Texas and second in the United States. They have educational programs instrumental in training national NASA astronauts in case of possible clinical emergencies. In addition to his medical role as a flight paramedic for Life Flight, Mr. Coles also serves as an administrator at the Director of Business Development for Memorial Hermann Health System. Thank you for being here today, Mr. Coles, and feel free to take it away.
Hey, well, thank you for the introductions, and thank you for both of them. So we, what I do with Lifeline and Memorial Hermann is a small piece of who I am as an individual, and so I'm happy, I'm honored to have an opportunity to talk to you guys about kind of a virtual shadowing process of who I am as a person, how do I get to where I am, and plans, and then maybe even dabble in some communication outside of work-related items, family and decision making. So I guess to start off with, we'll focus first on Life Flight. Who am I with Life Flight? So in 2010, I got an offer to be a part of the Memorial Hermann Life Flight family as a flight paramedic. At the time, it didn't really mean much to me. There were some openings, and I thought, yeah, I'd give it a shot, and it'd be pretty cool to fly on a helicopter and have high acuity patients. I didn't have a big grasp of what we did at Memorial Hermann Life Flight, so I just thought, well, yeah, helicopters are cool. They go fast. Like this is what I want to do. And then after about a year of working for them, I realized how far our reach at Life Flight was, how well rooted we are in the community, and how fortunate I was to be working with some of the leading physicians and business folks and ISD and dispatchers and maintenance. To being around people much better or greater or significant than me kind of elevated me to an idea that really the future is limitless for the path that we take. And I'll talk more about my history and everything, but to start with, I want to talk a little bit more about a Life Flight. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this works well. And so I guess you can see what I see here with y'all see the presentation? Okay. So my name's Josh Coles. We got that. I've worked for Life Flight for 11 years now. I have an office out of Memorial Hermann in the medical center, and I also have an office out of our corporate office in Memorial City. And I kind of split my weeks between those two and then working from home. I have an incredible wife. We'll talk about her in a little bit. She's not here, so I can say the complete truth about her and she won't get mad. I have 4 crazy kids, all boys. I'm a boy making factory, so no girls in our house, just all 4 boys, ranging from 3 to 13. So sanity is something I will talk about in this presentation. How do you achieve it? What to look for, and then once you learn how to achieve your sanity, you really want to focus your time, energy, and effort, and succeeding and maintaining it. So that's an important part. So I do like to talk a little bit. Luckily for y'all, I've given a few presentations over the past couple of days, and so I'm almost tired of talking. So this will be shorter than you would expect. So I won't take up too much of your time, but I figured we talk for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then we do some good question and answers. When we do the Q&A session, I hope you guys are completely honest and blunt in whatever questions you ask. There's literally nothing that I won't talk about. If you have a question about anything related to my life, I'd be happy to answer. So Life Flight is it's a critical care air medical transport in Houston, Texas. We serve about 150 miles, like the introduction said. We're the only nonprofit air ambulance service, which is really important when it comes to mission statement, value of quality of care, and reinvestment of money back into the services that we provide. We fly over 3,500 patients a year, adult and pediatrics, which makes our helipad at Memorial Hermann in the medical center one of the busiest civilian helipads in the nation. We are the first service in Texas and the second in the United States since we took flight August of 1976. 24 hours a day, 365 in a multitude of weather conditions we can fly. We have 6 aircrafts, 4 of them are in service 24/7, one's partial and one's a backup. We are the original life flight. So when you travel around the nation or you go work for a hospital-based system, or you become a physician somewhere else in the United States, if they have a life flight, it started with us. That is our name, it's trademarked. But we'll let other air medical providers use that name if they have 3 things in process. 1, they can't be competing with us, obviously. 2 is they must be a not-for-profit air medical organization. You will never find a for-profit named Lifelight. And 3, they must operate twin-engine aircraft, because we feel like that safety component is necessary for our brand. This is a pretty cool photo of our aircraft being refueled. So unlike a car where you'd have to turn off to refuel, we actually refuel as the aircraft is running, because believe it or not, Jet A fuel that we use is very unlikely to be a combustible process. And so it's just kind of more of a diesel type of fuel. And so it's very safe. And that way it saves us from having to start and stop engines. Since we have 2 engines, that takes time consuming and very costly to do that. We have 6 state-of-the-art aircrafts. We can carry up to 2 patients. We have all the emergency gear. I always say that we're a combination of emergency medicine and ICU medicine, which there's a very big difference between the two, and we are kind of the marriage between the two. We are outfitted with the most advanced avionics available. We have the highest level of safety and situational awareness in the industry. But in addition to the rotor wing helicopters that we also have planes that will fly anywhere in the world that's safe to fly to pick up patients, which we do about 30 of those a year. Our aircrafts are rear loading, so they're very expeditious, and the transfer of a patient from the helipad to either the ER or the operating room. It's actually pretty cool. 2 years ago, we formalized a new process where we can bypass emergency room for severely injured patients that we don't think would survive the time in the emergency room. So we can go directly to the operating room. So from the time that we land at the helipad at Memorial Hermann in the medical center, we can be in the operating room in 2 to 3 minutes. And our average start time for surgery from the time we land until the start of surgery is 18 minutes compared to national average of an hour and 23 minutes. So when you talk about trauma and what we're doing, it's pretty cool stuff. So we fly at 155 knots. That's the average cruise speed, which is fast. No stop signs, no speed limits, right? So ultimately, the speed is one of the things that is the most beneficial part of using Lifelight. So I imagine you guys from kind of all around the area. If you were in the Katy area, it's about a 12-minute flight for us. If you're in, let's say, Brazoria County or Lake Jackson, it's about a 17-minute flight, just to give you an idea of how quickly the aircraft goes. We have some of the most experienced crews: pilot, paramedic, and nurse. That's the typical makeup of the crew. A pilot arguably is important. We don't go very far without somebody flying the aircraft. Paramedic is because we have about half of our scenes or half of our volume are scenes: shootings, stabbings, motor vehicle collisions, falls, etc. And the paramedic brings that expertise. And then the other about half of our volume comes from hospital transfers, with hospitals that have limited resources or personnel, and they have high acuity patients, and the nurse brings their expertise. So training is the utmost. We have a phenomenal opportunity because of all the support of the Houston community and the donations we receive, that we're able to allocate a lot of funds to training, equipment, and our resources for quality. We have a lot of advanced capabilities. I know this is not really so much of a Lifelight presentation, so I'll go through it pretty quickly, but we have direct access to anywhere in the hospital that's appropriate for emergent patient care. We have all the medications and equipment that we need in the aircraft to manage high acuity patients. You might hear people say that the patient's too unstable for transfer. That's never the case with a Lifelight. We've never turned down a patient because they are too critical. We can stabilize them with the medications that we have. If it's trauma, it's typically blood. We carry 6 units of blood on the aircraft, which is staggering. And then every once in a while, we'll actually have a patient that uses all 6 units of blood, which we just had one recently, which any other environment without that, most likely she would not have survived her injuries. But she did, and she's alive today as a result of the capabilities in the aircraft and the amount of blood products that we carry. We use ultrasound for the diagnostic tools. We can take 2 patients. We have the most advanced military grade white phosphorus night vision goggles. For me to say all this, you say, okay, that sounds good, but a lot of air medical providers don't have any of this, or they just have a few. We are very fortunate, again, because of the support of the community, to have all these resources. We have base locations in Tomball, Baytown, Angleton, and Katy. We also do run that half aircraft out of our hospital, the medical center. So this is a pretty cool photo. This is one of the highlights of my career, I think, is for 2 years. I pushed to get an aircraft moved and open up a new location. And after a lot of challenges of working with a big corporate company, we're able to finally move the aircraft and serve the Brazoria County community. So I'm in the center there, cutting the ribbon with the Vice President of Trauma Services and that's the county judge, county commissioners, a lot of the leaders in the community. And so it was a really neat event to see us have that base there and serve the community that was otherwise underserved for emergent high level of medical care. So sometimes people have these myths about what we do and don't do. We're more than happy to fly CPR in progress. We have blood products are always on our aircraft, regardless of the circumstances. If you get one of our aircraft, you're going to get blood. We actually transport patients anywhere appropriate for their injury or illness. So as needed, we can go to St. Luke's or Methodist or UTMB, but usually we go to Memorial Hermann facility. We have a green aircraft. It's just like all the other ones. So our volume, one of the things that makes us special is volume, right? We, instead of doing about 25 to 30 flights a month, we'll do about 70 to 80 flights a month. So it's unheard of in the air medical to have such volume. We'll have a base this summer that will break 100 flights a month, 2 or 3 months out of the summer. We fly mostly trauma, but we have a lot of specialties as well. So we're gonna skip that. This is cool. This is This is an example of the ultrasound diagnostics that we use in the aircraft. This is an example of a bladder, and you can see the bottom right of it. You see a little black kind of a triangle portion there. That's an example of a positive fast exam on a patient. That would indicate there'd be fluid around the bladder, which would be secondary mostly to a pelvic injury. And so in this environment, we would start giving blood to them more aggressively as we know that there's a likelihood for a volume loss and the patient become decompensated if we don't manage them early. So what makes life flight cool? The best thing is a friendship. When you work for a big hospital system, and a little bit later, I'll talk about culture and workplace environment and choosing the right place to spend your time, right? Your time on earth is limited. Make the best of it. And one of the best things I can say is when you choose a place to work and spend so much time of your life, make sure it's the right place. This particular thing about Life Flight, this is us. If we're not working together, we're usually hanging out in some capacity. This right here is a 204-mile race from Gonzales, Texas to Houston. It's called the Texas Independence Relay. They do it every year. This is us. They didn't have it last year. So 2 years ago, we ran and we got first place in our division. So this is, it's me and 11 other of our coworkers, and it's flight paramedics, it's flight nurses, it's pilots. And, let's see here, at least 2 of these guys are pilots. I'll take that back. One of them is pilot who flew Blackhawks in the military for many years, highly decorated veteran. We have mechanics, we have dispatchers, we have everything in here. And that's what's really cool about the family of Life Flight coming together. So the friendship by far is, it's one of the best things, because I don't want to take away anything from this part. The history of Life Flight is one of the things that makes us the most unique air medical provider. If you've never met this guy, or if you didn't have the opportunity to meet him or know about his legendary career with Memorial Hermann in Houston, that is Dr. James Red Duke. Dr. Duke, to say he was an inspiration and a leader and a pioneer in trauma management would be an understatement in every category. He interviewed me in 2010, and it's just his style of management and leadership. Every month we would meet was very uncharacteristic of what you would see in big business. It was very much this is what needs to be done. We'll get it done. I don't care about anything else. It was very to the point and very efficient. And so we miss him very much. He passed away a few years ago now in August, but what he's left behind will live on forever. Always progressing. We're always doing new things. This here is, that's me with the chief flight nurse. We, about a year ago, started a new process where we fly K9s, which are law enforcement personnel in the state of Texas. And so we have the capability. We worked with Texas A&M Veterinarian School to create kind of this process. So there's always things like this that really makes Lifelight kind of a staple on the map. Teamwork. This is an example of us onto a scene where we had 3 different aircrafts. I've been on many scenes, mostly shootings that involve multiple aircrafts. And so we'll have 3 or 4 aircrafts to manage all the high or severely injured patients. So the teamwork between us is phenomenal. Outreach. I get to be on the news. So I've been on ABC 13, KHOU. I just had a meeting with CW39s, having the opportunity to talk about Lifelight and be engaged in the community, and more importantly, for the community to learn more about us is pretty cool. We provide the highest level of care in the pre-hospital setting. Everything that we can do for patients is giving them the best chance of survival. And collaboration, we work with a lot of cool people. We have a very close working relationship. Y'all talked about NASA and relationship with some of the astronauts. We'll go to the buoyancy lab and do training with their team over there. This is an example of a Black Hawk landing on our helipad. The Black Hawks are very engaged, especially during rescue situations like Hurricane Harvey. They'll come and drop off patients on our helipad because it's equipped to hold the 22,000-pound aircraft of a Black Hawk. They are a very large aircraft, so that the picture doesn't do justice of just how impressive it is. And this is our new helipad of the aircraft taking off that we just moved to this new tower last March and became operational. And so March 2020. And so we're really excited about being in. And now that COVID precautions are starting to loosen up a little bit, we're able to start doing tours. And I'm not sure, should I call somebody out already? Katie Chin, I don't know if she's on the call, but she was she came around and did a kind of a shadow program, spent a few hours with us and saw the operations. And I'd be happy to do something similar for anybody else who's interested. Probably maybe just an hour at a time, but if you want to actually see the hospital and meet some of the folks that we work with, I'd be happy to have those conversations with you. Okay, that's my Lifelight story. So when it comes to who I am as an individual, it's way more boring than Lifelight, for the record. I'll say that right now. Lifelight is way cooler. So I spent my time in Clear Lake. I grew up in Clear Lake. My dad worked for NASA for 42 years. He retired as a deputy CIO director out of Washington, D.C. So Clear Lake and NASA has always been a big part of my life. And during my whole, kindergarten through 12th grade, I played football, ran cross country, and then I was involved in HOSA. And the cool thing about HOSA, there was a cute girl in HOSA, and you guys, I think all are familiar with HOSA. And so she was dating a friend of mine, so we couldn't date. But she said, "Hey, do you want to join HOSA with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, you're cute, I'll follow." And she said, "Let's do this EMS program." And I said, "Okay, I don't know what it is, but I'll do it." And so in my senior year in high school, I became an EMT, not knowing that would put me on a path through life that I never would have expected, because my plans were much different than really engaging in the medical community. But I became an EMT when I was a senior in high school. Then after high school, I went to Baylor in Waco. I volunteered with West EMS and Beverly Hills Fire Department. It sounds cool to say I worked for Beverly Hills Fire Department, but it literally is like a population of maybe 100 people right next to Waco. So it's cool to have a shirt that says Beverly Hills Fire Department, but it's not nearly as cool as it sounds. But it was a good time. It was a good experience. I spent 2 years at Baylor, and my brother in the state of Washington, I was very close with. He was in the food and beverage business, and I had a little bit of experience with that. And so he offered me a position as a assistant food and beverage director, working for a company called MTM in the state of Washington. So I thought this was a great opportunity. I thought, well, this might be a good career path for me. So I left Baylor. I went up there and started working for the company. I spent a year working for them in a place called Woodinville, Washington. And then I took a contract for 1 year out in a place called, I don't remember the name of it now. It's called Alderbrook Resort. It's really cool because the resort is next to Bill Gates's house. It's next to Nordstrom's house. And so it's a really pretty cool community. In the wintertime, there's nobody there. In the summertime, it's packed. And so I did that for about a year. And I realized that I finished that contract. And I realized food and beverage, I was only 20 years old. I was 20 and 21. And I realized quickly that the food and beverage industry is not something to make a long-term life with. It might be perfect for you or somebody else, but that is those are 12-hour days, not a lot of love and appreciation. And so there's a lot of perks to it, but it was not a career path that I wanted. So I came back to Houston. I ended up finishing my degree over at the U of H Clear Lake, and I got a bachelor's in psychology. I finished that, went on, got my MBA for UT Tyler, which a lot of people always ask me when they want to further their education, they say, what career path should I get? And so you can never go wrong with an MBA, because every business that you ever have any relationship with focuses on some core business processes or policies or procedures, and having a better understanding in how those work will always be a benefit for you. And actually, in my class, I was partnered with many physicians that were getting their MBA as well, which I thought was pretty surprising, but they wanted to get in administration. So let's see, out of that, so I volunteered for EMS agencies no matter where I was. I was always volunteering. And so when I came back to Houston and I finished my degree at U of H, in the meantime, I was still volunteering and teaching classes on CPR and first aid. So in 2000 and let's see, no, so I was 23, whatever year that was, 1964. That was a joke. I'm not that old. When I was 23, I started my first company. We did a CPR and first aid training for our first customer was British Petroleum. And I'll have a little bit of advice in every career path that I took. If you ever want to start a company in a partnership, my number one word of advice is have a very clean, well-articulated agreement that talks about roles and responsibilities and growth of that company. That will always be a challenge if you're in a partnership and it grows, and there's a challenge of whose responsibility is it, who makes the financial gain, and how that is distributed. So having that foundation established prior to the start of your partnership is rule number one, anytime you do that. So ultimately, I bought out my partner, and then I started my own company when I was, 2006. So I was 25. In 2006, I was 25. So probably a little bit older than most of y'all. That company the name of it is Dependable Resuscitation Training, LLC. That has been in business for 15 years. It has been a phenomenal savior. It is an incredible growth for my family and for the staff that we have. So I'll kind of mention that starting a business, no matter what you do as a long-term career path, starting a business, something that you're passionate about, would be a very big word of advice I have for you. There's a lot of benefits to that. One, you get to share your passion with others. You get to make money sharing your passion. Two, you can provide free services. I provide a lot of free services to nonprofit communities and organizations, even though it makes my wife upset. She doesn't, she thinks I should charge, but there's a lot of good that comes from doing free classes for local schools or churches or folks that maybe don't have the financial capabilities. And you go out there and do some consulting for them and help them, like local camps, Camp Choye out of Livingston. We've worked with them and given them some guidance on how to manage patients. My kids go there, so I want them to be well prepared in managing any type of emergency that comes up. So even though I had the success of the company and things were going well, something was still missing in my life. So in 2010, I had some friends that worked for Lifelight, and they said there was an opening and I should apply. I went ahead and made that, complete the application. I went through 9 interviews before I was offered the job, which is still the case now. It's about 9 interviews. My last one was Dr. Duke, and he gave the final thumbs up, and then I started that route. I balanced working for Lifelight, and I balanced my company for about first 8 years, and then it became a little too much as I transitioned into more of an administrative role. And so my wife now basically runs most of the company, and then we have good staff that is pretty self-sufficient. And so over the past 3 years, I've taken more of a administrative role in the outreach, education, and collaboration with EMS, fire, and police, and how we improve the pre-hospital patient care. I recently became the director of business development for Lifeline and trauma services. So I work with the trauma services side in addition to Lifeline, meaning all the EMS relations, all 11 hospitals that we have, the relationship with the EMS, how to improve processes, how to reduce mortality and morbidity, how to reduce time to definitive therapy, and how to improve relationships. So that's the majority of that. I've served on a lot of board of directors over the years. Over the past decade, I've served on 5 different board of directors, nonprofits and for-profits, in either the capacity of treasurer or president. I've started nonprofit companies as well. I have a nonprofit called Cools Conservation that focuses on ocean awareness, appreciation, and kind of redirecting a poor focus or direction in life, and then looking more to kind of a peaceful appreciation for what I'm not going to I'm not going to try to get to the religious side of it, but what was given to us or provided to us by whatever supreme being. And it works very well when you show people how beautiful the world is, when you get outside of the traditional busy life of cars and buildings, and you get on the water and you're able to find peace. So my hobbies. Oh, so I was going to show y'all something else. Let's see here. So a couple things. I'm going to show you a couple of photos real quick about. Let's see here. I'm just going to show my screen. Let's see. So the things that are important to me in my life. This is 2 of my 4 monsters. They are crazy and awesome. This is my opportunity to one of the many. I worked with Dr. Duke. We met on a monthly basis, but he really is pretty cool. This is one of my best friends, John Cornell. We've worked together on the aircraft since the beginning. And when you're 800 feet above the ground and it's just you and 2 other folks, you really want the best people around you. So that's it. This is my family in last December. So this is all of us. This is my wife, who's incredibly patient, all 4 kids who are not patient. And then there's me, who I hope to think I'm patient. So, and then I have a weird kick when it comes down to doing work. My dad taught me. My dad was a mathematician, and he was very particular about using pencils anytime you do work, because it's like life. A pencil's like life, right? You will always make mistakes. So scratch it, erase it, get a clean slate, and start over. One of the things I always try to tell my kids is you can never get frustrated with the mistakes that you make, because every time you make a mistake, it gives you an opportunity to do something better. And so a friend of mine told me about these Blackwing pencils, and I will tell you, I'm like a big kick on these. I think they're the greatest pencils ever created. If you're a pencil fan, you should check these out because they're worth it. And this is my incredibly beautiful, amazing wife, who's, if you have questions, she's probably a better person to talk to about becoming a physician. Everyone in her family is a physician. She's a stay-at-home mom, but she also, like I said, runs the company. So she stays very busy with things, but her father and uncles and aunts are all physicians. So she comes from that. So let's see here. There are a couple of notes that I just put down that I wanted to kind of end and kind of summarize with. The first thing is, y'all have a long life ahead of you, right? When it comes to work, if I'm going to give advice, because I'm a little bit older, if I'm giving advice to you, when it comes to a workplace, the most important thing to do is find a good, strong, positive culture in a place that you can always expand your knowledge. I can't underestimate the power of culture. When you go to work, you're going to, especially early in your career, you're going to be giving them a lot of your time. That's time that you never get back. It's like every other investment. If you want to invest in something, are you going to invest in a stock that you expect to deteriorate or never grow and make no money on? Or would you rather invest in McDonald's back in the 60s and then never have to work again, right? It's the same thing that when you find a place to put your time and energy and effort into in a workplace, is a place that you think will better your investment, which is you, right? You are your own investment. And so how do you find a place that's a good culture, and how do you look for that? Well, you do that by the interview process. I'm going to put in my fancy thing here. An interview process is never a one-way street. An interview process, and that's the number one mistake that younger folks make in an interview, is they don't ask a lot of questions. You should be asking as many, if not more, questions than the folks that interviewing you, because we want to know if you're a good fit for us, but ultimately you need to know if we're a good fit for you. Ask about tenure. Ask about the average tenure of employees. How long do people typically stay as employees? And then better yet, ask about when somebody leaves a company, where do they usually go? Do they usually go to a competitor? That would be a red flag that, you know, maybe there's an opportunity there. Maybe you should do that as well. Or maybe they go on to new things and they excel and they go from this and they use it as a stepping ladder, which is a good opportunity. And then asking employees, current employees, past employees. You know, there are always going to be people who are sour or that have a difference of opinions, but ultimately getting as much information as you can is important. I got the sun coming in here. I apologize here. I'm going to move my. Here you go. Nope, that's not better. Excuse me one second. All right. So the next thing that I'd recommend to you is the. And this is not a relationship goal, right? I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist or therapist, but I'll tell you from my personal experience. I was married once before I met the love of my life. And a financial advisor once told me there's the two biggest mistakes you can life, two biggest financial mistakes to make in life is retire too early and get a divorce because they're so expensive. And my response to that is sometimes the divorce is expensive because it's worth it. Now I'm a big advocate in staying married. Don't get me wrong, but we got married for the wrong reasons, and I put me in the position here. So the one thing I can tell you from that as advice is don't find somebody who completes you, right? That's the fairy tale of Jerry Maguire, right? Don't find somebody who completes you. Find somebody who compliments you. Find somebody who literally makes your soul smile. You're going to go through a lot, right, to find the right person, but don't look for somebody to fill a void, right? Complete yourself, then find somebody else. So that's my relationship goal. And then in life, my life goal to y'all is very simple, and it is find your balance. And that's the biggest struggle you'll ever have. My wife even bought me a book a few years ago because I had a hard time managing school and the company and Lifelight and the children and the house. And so she bought me a book about managing time. And in it, it says, imagine that your time is a garden and it's completely full, because it is, right? You're, whether you spend it watching TV or doing work, you're living 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And every time that you add something to it, you have to take something away. So if you have a lot of non-productive time, it makes sense to go ahead and add something that's productive, that's going to make you either more successful or happier. But when that garden is full of productivity and responsibilities, and you add something to it, something else is going to suffer from it. So understand that life is very much an ebb and flow, and finding the balance and the opportunity for you to do things that make you happy. You'll do a lot more work in your younger days because it's investing in your time and you're creating success. But as you get older, you start to make that transition into more of a work-life balance. And one of my favorite, so my hobby, sailing. I'd love to be on the water. My dad and I go sailing to the British Virgin Islands at least twice a year for 2 weeks at a time. And people always say, how do you take off 2 weeks? And I say, I take, so technically 4, right? And so what? I work 48. I work 48 weeks. I take off 4, right? I mean, 52 weeks. So the perspective of how do you do that? Well, I work a lot, so I want to enjoy my time. And when I'm on the boat, my phone goes off, my cell phone, right? And my computer goes off, and I focus on life. So this is us boating. You can see my wife, and actually her mom came with us this last trip. But that's us boating down the Sir Francis Drake Channel. And what I like the most about this is the quote of 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by things that you didn't do than by the ones that you did. So throw off the bow line, sail away from safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover by Mark Twain. So that is something, I mean, if you literally wake up every day and say, today I'm going to catch the wind, I'm going to harness the wind, and I'm going to make the most of it, you'll be a great success. And then the only other quote that I'll leave you with here before we do questions is that no matter how bad it gets, sometimes when it gets challenging, we always say, it's going to get easier. It's going to, right? We always want that. Like the path, we're on a dirt road. Eventually, it's going to get paved. No, it doesn't, right? It doesn't get easier. You get stronger. And that's a cool thing to keep in mind is that life, the whole lemons and lemonade thing, when you have a challenge, let it make you a better and stronger person. And I think that was a lot. I mean, that was more than I was expecting. So
Yes, thank you
hopefully,
so much.
hopefully half of y'all are still awake.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cools. So we'll get into a few questions and answers, a little session here as we wrap up the session for today. Our first question is, what are some of the most interesting cases you've seen?
Ooh. So it's a good question because it depends on the success of that flight. So some of the flights that are the most challenging with dealing with pediatrics, unfortunately, we fly a lot of injured and ill pediatrics, and I would say the interesting thing about that is it teaches you how to be a better parent. The most common thing that parents say in an environment where they have a severely injured child is that they just looked away for a little bit, or they thought somebody else was watching them. And so the growth that I've had seeing these incidents and accidents happening, and unfortunately the sorrow it brought others, has taught me a lesson about being a better parent. We save a lot of lives. I mean, when you have a patient who's not expected to live, who has less than a 5%. Okay, John Barnes is a great example. This is a public story, so we can talk about him. He was the officer at the Santa Fe High School shooting. He died on scene, and he was resuscitated by Life Flight and by the first responders. And while they're there, they're giving blood products. They were able to resuscitate him, and he spent obviously a very long time in the hospital at UTMB in Galveston. But ultimately, he's alive today, and he broke the odds. He's an out of hospital trauma arrest, which has a very high mortality rate, and he's alive today to talk about the success of things working together. And so, being a part of those links where you literally change the course of action and what a normal process would be or would have been for that patient. So those would probably be the most interesting. And I'd probably sum up with that. There's a lot of other stories, but it gets pretty, I'm not saying morbid, but high trauma patients can take a toll on you. And that's one of the benefits of moving to the administration side is I've done EMS for 20 years. And I've reached kind of my conclusion of patients. I think I'm done managing them moving forward. So.
All right, thank you so much. So the next question we have is a little related to kind of the mental health aspect to all of this, but more about how it was dealing with this to begin with. So what did it feel like when you were in your first ever trauma scene? And to tag along with that, did it take you a while to get used to seeing someone else in critical condition?
Good questions. These are thought-provoking. So I remember when I was an EMT basic student and I saw my first deceased person, and it was in the ER of a local hospital, and I was doing a rotation, and I remember doing compressions on her as a student, and when she was pronounced deceased, everybody just left, and I thought, how do you just leave? Should we say a prayer? Should we hold hand? I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to do, but to just leave the patient seems disconnected from some type of patient care process. And so that was kind of, and as you learn, you become hardened by the sight of death, especially when it comes to the adult population. Adults, when they die, it's a little bit different than obviously when pediatrics die. To give you one story of how the mental challenges of the job, one day, years ago, I literally flew down south, which was like the Brazoria County region, to pick up a 3-year-old boy that was a drowning victim. We took him to the hospital. I don't remember what happened. Right at the hospital, we were then dispatched to another 3-year-old drowning boy on the north side of Houston. Picked him up, took him. I don't remember what happened to either one of them specifically. Exactly 1 year later from that, I was on another flight down to the Brazoria County region, and I was in the aircraft, and I got a text message, and it was from a female who said, "I hope this is still you, Josh Cools. If so, I want to say thank you for everything you did for my son a year ago. I really appreciate everything that you do and the work that you do." And I don't remember the flight, and I said, "Okay, well, thank you for the text. I hope all is well with you and your family." She responded back, "My son would have been 4 today. You left me a voicemail when you got to the hospital and said that he was still alive but in critical condition. That voicemail was the last time my son was alive. I just wanted to say thank you for it because I listened to it all the time." And I thought, "Oh, that's okay. All right. Just going to keep on going." And I said, "Well, it's unfortunate the circumstances, but I'm glad that that the phone call left you some peace." And she sent me a photoshopped picture of him with angel wings and a halo on. So this is one of many things that come together, that things that you don't forget. A lot of the pediatric flights you don't ever forget. I'll tell you that. And so that part is tough. And the number one way to manage those and deal with that stress is the friendships that you build with people who do similar jobs. Somebody who doesn't do that job has no idea what it's like to have a 6-month-old that was ran over. You can't explain it. I have images that are incredibly concrete, like I was there yesterday. And so when you work with those that do the same job, you can talk about it, you can share, and then you focus on all the good. 99% of the things that you do are good. The 1% are the ones that are just tragic and there's nothing you could do. And so you recognize that, but then it's just like in life, you focus on all the positive and the good, and it'll put you in a better position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So a shadower from Katie actually asks, I'd be really interested in shadowing. What is the best way to get in contact?
The best way would be just to email me. And can you share my email address, or would you want me just?
I have the email.
Okay.
I can share you.
Okay, perfect. So it'll be shared, and you can email me, and we'll see about trying to get you guys up to. So my primary office is at our corporate headquarters in Mim City. If you want to go there, you can. It's just not very exciting. It's very boring. It's just offices. So I would highly recommend. On Wednesdays, I typically go to the medical center, and I work out of my office there. And that's where we have a helipad and all the cool stuff. That's where the people in flight way better. So Wednesdays would probably be best.
Okay, sounds good. So by the presentation you gave, you're definitely passionate, and your life has really led you to a career as a flight paramedic. But in the case, in an alternate universe where you're not a flight paramedic, what would you be and why?
A business owner. Yeah. I love being a business owner. And it's the nice thing about Memorial Hermann is I have unlimited growth. I report to the VP of Trauma Services, and there's an opportunity for me to have that role, and then the role after that, and it literally is limitless. As a business owner, you're maxed. Now you can grow the business and grow it, but ultimately you'll never be anything other than the CEO of your own business, which is good. And don't get me wrong, but you never disconnect from owning a business, and you have more bosses. People say, "I want to own a business because I want to be my own boss." That's not how it works. When you own a business, everybody's your boss. Every customer is your boss. But I enjoy medicine. I've enjoyed it my whole life, but I enjoy business more. I like making decisions that either have an impact, not just from a single entity, but from a larger perspective on how to manage the patients and improve outcome in patients. So I definitely, and I like finance.
So you mentioned a few cases of, especially with pediatrics, a few cases of dealing with mental health. Just viewing the scene is kind of difficult to see. How do you personally take care of your mental health, especially with, like you said, seeing so many critically injured patients?
So that kind of goes back to the friendships that you share. And there's a couple folks at LifeLight that I work with that on a bad call, we meet up and we'll have a drink and we'll just talk about it. I'm not saying drinking is a solution, but just from a social aspect, you go to a local place, you hang out and you talk about it, and you just know, that you have a crutch if you need it. Sometimes, how sometimes you might hurt your ankle and then you forget about it. Like you're walking and you forget that your ankle hurts and someone says, "How's your ankle?" You're like, "Yeah, actually it kind of hurts a little bit." Yeah, now you say that, I realize it hurts. That's how dealing with difficult patients and calls can be, is really don't think about them. You try not to think about them and you live a life and you stay busy. And so they're not there. And then when people ask about them, it brings them up as far as those are challenging times. But the friendship is the number one way to do it. Now there's a much more formal process called critical incident stress debriefing, CISD, or critical incident stress management. The state of Texas will help you. It's a phone call and you get a psychiatrist, you get local supporters that will meet with you. And it's a very formal and phenomenal process. I did that once. I probably should have done it a few other times just to have those relationships, because they're honestly pretty priceless when you meet folks from all over the state of Texas that have similar scenarios. But child abuse, child trauma, those are the things that when people tell me they want to be a pediatric, emergency room physician or a pediatric oncologist, I just say, man, I wish you the best, because I that is not a job that I have the capacity to do. That there'd be a lot of good, but that takes a special person.
So one chatterer asks, I'm in the process of starting my own nonprofit organization. My greatest fear is that it will flop. What do you advise me to do to ensure success and or ease my mind of self-doubt?
Well, I guess my question is, define flop. What does that mean to you? Does it mean that you won't get donations? Does it mean that you don't grow? What do you want to do? I would ask, what is your purpose? What are the parameters of success and the parameters of failure? And then by looking at the parameters of success, you look at how to get to them one step at a time. If it's so that's kind of a long conversation I'd be happy to have with them on an individual basis. But if you're passionate about it, it won't fail. That's rule number one. If it's important to you, you'll make it a success. Because if it's important to you, you won't take no and you won't take failures as anything other than hurdles. And you'll finish the race strong. So I'd be happy to give some guidance, but but talking about what the goal because that's the beautiful thing about nonprofit. For profit, the whole benefit is to make money. A not-for-profit is education, it's awareness, it's community outreach, it's hobby, where you just have this and you're able to raise funds for certain things. And so finding out more about the nonprofit, I could probably give some better guidance.
Also, another question we have is, what is the biggest challenge you had to overcome in your journey, and how has that changed you?
Probably after my divorce, I went from living in a house with a wife and 2 kids to moving into an apartment that was very lonely. And so that was the biggest challenge. And that's when I focused more on, that was 10 years ago. And then I started to learn more about me. And that's when I learned about, I wanted to make myself the best I could be before I was in a relationship with anybody else. That's when that was the biggest thing, because in my previous relationship, I felt like there was a void in that maybe she filled it. But it was after that I realized that was one of the best decisions, but it was by far the most challenging when you're not with your kids and your family and you spend nights like in an apartment alone after being with noise and happiness. And so by far my biggest challenge, but also my biggest opportunity for growth.
Definitely. Also, with the shifting dynamics of COVID-19 happening roughly a year ago, how has that changed over the course of the past year or so as a flight paramedic?
So 2 routes. As a flight paramedic, the only thing that really changed was the amount of personal protection equipment we put on. From the administrative side, it changed a lot. We had to look at how we manage these flights, what would be the safest thing, what type of volume we were looking at, how do we dedicate aircraft, should we use multiple aircraft, should we use just one? So managing the logistics of that population was the biggest challenge, because we wanted to obviously reduce any risk of exposing our crews, because we're a very small department. We only have 74 people and we have no outside assistance. So if one person gets sick and spreads it, you can shut down an department very quickly. So fortunately, we managed that very well and we did not ever have that issue. And then, as I will say, as a business owner, it was more challenging because for my company, March through September of last year, we went from a very high functioning, busy operations to completely everything stopped because we do consulting and patient care management with petrochemical industries, and at that point, nobody was doing that. Everybody said no visitors, no vendors, no nothing, no outside people would be in, and so that was the biggest challenge. And so we had to make changes to a virtual training platform, virtual consulting platform, using some tax opportunities and advantages to kind of gain leverage over other competitors. So that was the biggest one, but it's worked out well. Virtual platform has been very beneficial to us. Like any other time, there's a guy who once said, "There's no such thing as bad news," right? Because it's all about perspective. You say that there's a story of a guy was given a horse, and he says, "It was great news. We just got a free horse. It was great. It's fantastic." And then my son got on it, and he fell and broke his arm. So now the horse was bad news because it resulted in my son breaking his arm. But then the next day, the military came and they took every able-bodied male into the military to fight the war. Well, they couldn't take my son, so now the broken arm was good news. And so perspective is a big important thing in life. If you're driving and you get a flat tire, you think, "Oh my God, it was such a bad thing. I got a flat tire." What would happen if you didn't get a flat tire? We don't know, right? What if that flat tire stopped you from getting in a wreck? What if it stopped something major from happening? And so life is a beautiful thing. Enjoy it and understand that it's going to happen. So it's like the sailboat. Just put the sails up, let it take you, and understand that you're going to get some curveballs from time to time and get good at hitting the curveballs.
I had a question for you, Mr. Cole, personally. This session was really interesting. I loved hearing such a unique specialty. There's not so many out there doing like this kind of stuff. I wanted to ask, how did you manage to balance your time back, especially when you're doing the patient care and some business thing, running your nonprofit, your organization, your company? How did you balance the time? Like, what did you like? Was there any techniques that you had, or any particular strategies you had to balance your time?
I get up early in the morning and start your day off right. That's one thing. Get up. If you lay in bed an hour, my wife's not here, so I'm going to tell you. My wife, she wakes up and stays in bed for like an hour, drinks coffee, relaxes, and I'm like, I don't understand it. I don't. I'm like, well, how do you do that? Like, so I'm 4:35 a.m. in the morning. I'm up. I start my day off, and by exercising or going to the gym, or at least depending on what I have to do, getting work done and being productive, and it just sets the trajectory of the day for success. And so, that would probably be the biggest thing, is the first hour of your day is the best indicator of how that day will go, from my personal experience.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our session for today. We're nearing the end of our time, so thank you so much, Mr. Cools, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. For our audience, to receive a certificate for this session, you must pass the quiz on our website, which is now uploaded. Be sure to join us for our July conference over July 17th and 18th. That's going to be a weekend featuring virtual shouting sessions and much more. Also, we will soon be opening the summer seminar series, so make sure to be tuned for that. And those are the two things that we have going on upcoming during the summer, so make sure not to miss out on either of them here at the Pre-Med scene. Thank you all for joining, and thank you once again, Mr. Cools. Have a great night, everyone.
Sounds good. Thank you all very much. Y'all take care.
You too.
See you. Bye.
I have a question.
Yes. What's your question?
So I was at the session, the last session with Dr. Fraser.